Tonight is the Day of the Dead. Tonight, the dead return.
Hello, Londo. I came back.
Adira? Adira Terry? My Adira? Well, you're dead.
Would you like it any better if I were to tell you that you will betray the endless shock?
You are lying.
You know, some guys would be flattered if a not entirely uncute dame returned from the dead to spend a night of lust and passion with them.
Protected routine. Passcode requested.
Captain Elizabeth Lockley. Passcode 2 words. Zoe's dead.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. President, alien races with ears, alien races without ears, and Zooty's friend Bingo, the invisible fish.
Surprises and ghostly encounters during Day of the Dead. Watch Babylon 5, Wednesday night at 10, exclusively on TNT.
You have transmissions holding.
Patch incoming signal. Full audio and video decode.
Purple files accessed.
What you are about to see has never been shown to anyone outside the Grey Council.
Hello, everyone out there in podcast land. Welcome to Grey 17, a Babylon 5 podcast, a part of the Front Row Network and NPR Illinois Community Voices. We're a group of newbies watching Babylon 5 for the very first time, and a group of first ones who are watching Babylon 5 for the umpteenth time. And we are here almost to the middle of season 5. We're a quarter of the way through and then some. And we're here today to talk about the Neil Gaiman scripted, the only non-JMS scripted piece in almost 4 seasons, and that is Day of the Dead. I'm Scott, and with me is
Blake,
Jessi,
Mike,
Emily,
Kevin,
and Nicole.
Before we get started talking about this episode, reminder to click all the links down below. We have our social media accounts that are active on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And we also have our Discord, which I did kick in the behind here last week, so they're chatting again. And to get on the Discord, all you got to do is be a part of our Patreon. So you can join the Patreon at any level and get access to both the general chat and the spoiler chat. Along with that, please be sure to like, subscribe, follow. If you're watching on YouTube, click those like buttons, the notify buttons, the little bell icon, and the subscribe. And if you're listening on your audio podcast app of choice, be sure to hit that follow and subscribe button. And finally, if you can, please be sure to go to Apple and leave us a review. That really is what helps get new folks to find us. We are running kind of short on reviews that aren't from a douchebag. Because he did drop another one.
Are we still getting those?
Yeah, he's just copy and pasting now. He says try
loser.
harder. But the last review I have in here, guys, is a very long-winded one, so bear with me as I go. And I read Over in Dover's review. Over in Dover says, "You got Koshed." Yes.
Forgot about
That's
that.
it.
Damn.
That's it. 5 stars, though. So thank you, Over in Dover.
Yes, thank
it.
you.
We appreciate it a great deal. Okay, guys, let's go ahead and get started. And Nicole, I believe you have a synopsis for us.
Yes, I do. Some of the crew are caught with the Bracuri as they celebrate their Day of the Dead, a remembrance of the recently deceased. A pair of famous entertainers visits the station.
Infamous entertainers, more like it.
Yeah.
Let's go ahead and talk to our newbies about their first impressions on this episode. And let's go to Jessi first. First impressions on Day of the Dead.
I liked the episode for the most part. I probably did not like the episode for the reasons that everybody else liked it. I'm not a Ben and Teller fan. And I'm sure that just pissed off like half the people listening. But much like Langley, I don't fucking care for them. And I did not find it funny.
Much like
and
Langley? You're going to get the name right sooner or later, I swear.
What's her name?
Lockley, not Langley. That's the CIA headquarters.
Yeah.
not even drunk. Let's start over.
That's the problem.
No, let's not. Keep going.
Much like Lockley, I do not find them funny. I don't find anything about them funny, and I'm not amused by the dumb shit that comes out of their mouths. So there's my anger showing. Sorry, guys. But I really did enjoy the plot about the Day of the Dead, and watching, like, it was interesting to see who came and visited people that I wouldn't expect. I really, well, we can talk about that, but Lennier, I assumed it was going to be Marcus. It was, in fact, not Marcus. But it was definitely that part I very, very much enjoyed.
So were Rebo and Zooty actually Penn and Teller? Is it bad that I don't know that?
Well, Penn's no longer fat, but yes.
What the fuck planet do I live on?
We've been asking that for a long time.
We're not sure.
How did I not know that? What the hell?
Drugs. Lots of drugs.
I'm not up to snuff with the comedians of old lore. I don't know. I guess.
They have a residency in Vegas right now. They're probably playing tonight. And it's not exactly old lore.
I've never been to Vegas. I don't know shit about Vegas, guys. Well, you're going to hate what I have to say about them.
I was a big fan of Bullshit. That was my favorite show they did. Bullshit was great. Especially, well, go watch the vaccine episode. It really hits home nowadays.
It really does.
Okay, Nicole, your first impressions, aside from having no pop culture skills at all.
I do, but just not with that, apparently.
They weren't in Twilight, so you don't care.
Shut up. So I didn't really like them. I thought the Zooty guy was annoying, talking through the machine. Just fucking talk. You're not Silent Bob. You know what I mean?
That's Teller's shtick.
I don't know that, you guys.
You're not Silent Bob? Okay, time out. You pull the Kevin Smith reference, but you can't know who Penn and Teller are?
Yeah, for real.
Seriously?
Fuck.
Apparently I live under a rock.
I mean, if you'd like to send your hate mail to Nicole, Teller was there before Silent Bob.
Okay, well, fuck me then, I guess. I don't know. I didn't know that. I'm sorry if I offended
If you would
the
like
world.
to send hate mail to Nicole or fuck her, send an email to Grey17podcast
Please don't.
gmail.com.
No, I really, honestly, I feel stupid that I didn't know that. So thanks for making me feel worse, assholes.
You're
But
welcome.
anyway.
What friends are for?
Yeah, so overall, I thought it was a really good episode. I was shocked as hell with who visited Lennier. I was really interested to learn more about Lockley's background, like pre-Sheridan and pre-Earth Force. That was really cool that we got to see a snippet. I have some questions about that girl and who she was, but we'll get into that. And I was actually really happy that Londo got visited by Adira. That was very sweet. And Garibaldi, good little Catholic boy, behaved himself. Good for him. Which surprises me, to be honest. But yeah, overall, I like this episode. I didn't know if I would, but I actually really, really did.
Emily, first impressions.
So last week was awkward telepath sex, and now we get sex with the resurrected dead. Like, really?
Don't kink shame.
People got a bone. It's okay, Emily.
You just talked about Hook and Wendy like last week. Don't kink shame.
And hey, Londo banging a dead chick was not nearly as awkward as the telepath sex last week.
Accurate.
Okay, but I really want to know what kind of bra she was wearing, because damn, I need that. Yeah, tell us I know. God, this episode wasn't great. It wasn't terrible. It was nice actually getting some background on Lockley. I found that storyline actually the most interesting. And I'm not convinced Garibaldi and Dodger didn't do a little something.
He was too busy playing Radio Shack most of the night.
That wasn't the whole night. He got
17 minutes.
All I'm saying, there was time.
She put on her flight suit or her military garb. Okay, let's go over.
Just another kink. That's all.
Things unzip, dude. Things unzip.
You wouldn't even bang her when she was alive, literally. Okay, let's go.
You got
over
a second chance.
Sometimes you take them.
Tell us more. No, okay, let's go over to our first ones and get their first impressions. Mike, you're over here shaking your head and questioning life choices. So go right ahead. Tell us why.
Yeah, I don't know, man. This episode was fine. It was like the definition of fine for me. I didn't hate it. I thought some of the storylines were interesting enough. I mean, I thought it was very interesting who came back to visit who, and obviously the Lennier thing was a twist. I kind of just agree with what everybody else said about, Londo's visitor was kind of a sweet thing, and the Lennier thing was a twist, and Lockley's was interesting. It was interesting to get a little bit of backstory on her character, and I think it continues to highlight that Tracy Scoggins is actually a very good actress, I think. And but overall, I guess the thing that's weird to me is as much as I think earlier in the series in the podcast I had stated that I liked I liked serialization, but I also like that you get the story of the week, the kind of one-offs that tell an interesting sci-fi premise. And I think this is a very interesting premise. But I do feel like overall I don't know, it felt kind of like it fell a little bit flat to me, I guess, overall. Like I didn't get super excited about it in general. So I don't know. Like I said, it was just okay.
Kevin.
I really like this episode. It's one of my favorites of season 5. Penn and Teller, while they may not have been particularly funny in this episode, it's clear that our sense of humor has changed between now and the 23rd century. So but the Lockley stuff especially is great. I thought the whole episode is really interesting. Stick around once we're done with the main to talk about the Beyond the Rim stuff, because there's definitely going to be a discussion there too. But overall, I really like this episode.
Guess that means we have to stick around, guys.
Yep.
Okay. Blake.
Son of a bitch. I'm going to agree with Kevin 2 weeks in a row. Fuck. We need to stop this. This is not the natural order of things.
One more time and Armageddon begins.
No shit.
Yeah. Dogs and cats living together.
Mass hysteria.
Mass hysteria. It's just not going to work. Next thing you know, there's going to be crossing of the streams and blowing a few floors off the building.
What's fucking happening?
Now I'm going to have to watch Ghostbusters again. And by
You're
the
welcome.
way, if you haven't watched it yet, Frozen Kingdom is
Empire.
good. It was originally Frozen Kingdom. They changed the name. Frozen Empire is a damn good movie.
So good. So good.
Really is.
Can't wait to see it.
So I do like this episode. It's got several things I like. One, Neil Gaiman writing. I like some of the stuff he comes up with. It does have Harlan Ellison appearing as a voice in it, because Harlan is the voice of the Machine.
Nicole, Harlan Ellison was a sci-fi author of some report.
Who is the dick now? Okay.
I don't know who Neil Gaiman is either. So how about that, Scott?
Have you ever watched American Gods?
No.
That was a big thing. He also did one of the better episodes of Doctor Who.
Never watched that.
Scott, you already mentioned Bullshit. That is absolutely one of my favorite shows with Penn and Teller. Especially as you watch some of those episodes, they still hold up. Like you said, go watch the vaccine episode. Definitely holds up. So it was fun to see Penn and Teller in here as well. And the storylines, the writing. I mean, Neil Gaiman's script played with characters that he wanted to explore and he thought he could have some fun with. And there's so many things this episode could be. The way he described it as being a ghost story about religion, a drama about comedy, the nature of metaphor. There's so many different things this episode can be. And honestly, I'm as much of a fan of JMS's writing as I am. I think this script was just brilliant. I love this one.
Yeah, I enjoy this episode a lot too. I mean, we hyped it up back in season 1 when we said that JMS was going to start writing everything except for one script. And here we are. And this was one of those where Neil and JMS are friends. Actually, Neil wrote the foreword to JMS's autobiography. And so JMS went to Neil Gaiman and said, hey, do you want to write something? And he came up with the idea. And as Blake said, dove into a lot of old scripts to find the characters he wanted to play with and put it together. My only concern with this episode, my only pushback on it, is I think we didn't have enough time for all of the little pieces to breathe. Mm-hmm. I would have preferred, I almost think that Lennier and Mr. Morden, even though that was a fun little mix, they didn't get enough to do there. So I would have pulled them out and given more time to Tracy and Zoe and to Garibaldi and Dodger and even Londo and Adira, because I just think with 4 of those, or 5, four of those, it's a little too tight. I think I would want to see more of that opportunity. But
well, and that's why, Scott, what I'll throw in there is, I know we're going to watch another movie coming up that they did around B5. Honestly, that script could have been the hour episode, and this could have been the movie. You could have blown this up into the movie.
That would have been fun. Give a couple more characters the opportunity to, that would, I like that idea a lot. Let's go back and get that done. 1998, here we come. But yeah, no, I enjoy it. I am not the biggest Penn and Teller fan. I do enjoy them, as I already mentioned, and Blake mentioned too. I do like some of their TV shows. However, this script was written before Penn and Teller got casted, and you can tell because they didn't get to do a lot of their humor. They did what was in the script. Even the voice of the machine was added after they casted Teller to give him the opportunity to keep with his character because Teller don't speak. So that kind of got added. But so I think if Penn and Teller would have given more time to write their own stuff, I think it would have been more fun. I go back to the other show that they pop into in West Wing, and I think they do a better stand-up in West Wing when they burn the flag, more so than this. But
yeah, because that's them.
Exactly.
And the only time Teller talks is when he's on the Daily Show.
If you ever heard Teller talk, it's fun because the guy's actually like a thespian. He's great, but his shtick is he don't talk. Okay, let's go ahead and dive in. What I'd like to do here, guys, is I'd like to take every one of the nights individually, so we can just get those knocked out. Nicole, which one do you want to talk about?
Let's start with Lockley and Zoe.
Okay, go for it.
That was really interesting because we got to learn a lot more about Lockley. So is it safe to say that she was a drug addict and she was like living in a crack motel with a girl? Was it her lover or her friend? Do we know?
I think it was friend / platonic sister, not really familial. Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. So good friend. So interesting to learn that Lockley was out partying, doing drugs, living a really crazy life. And she said we had to do things to get by. We never ate. So like, was she like hooking for drugs? Like what was her life? Like that was wild. Also, I want to know, she said something about her dad and 15 Marines came together. And even though after all the things he did, she was happy to see him. So she's got daddy issues too, apparently. So I would love to know more about that. Seeing her on screen and the way she is and the way she is now, you would have never guessed that she had a past like that. I mean, I'm not like judging or anything. I'm just saying it just totally blew me away that like that's kind of where she came from. And really, if you think about it, we have no idea where she came from. We know nothing about her except that she was married to Sheridan and it didn't work out. So anything before that information that we know nothing about. So it was just really cool to learn a little bit more about her, and it kind of made me appreciate her a little bit more and appreciate how she is and like the fact that she is not afraid to speak her mind. Because I don't know, like it makes sense that a little bit more now that she is the way she is, because you can tell she's been through some shit and now we know what the shit is. You know what I mean? So it was really, I thought that whole sequence was really interesting and it was really cool to learn more about her.
Emily.
Yeah, I did appreciate learning more about her backstory. And I found it really interesting when she was talking about her dad, because it made me wonder, like, if something happened with her and her dad and that was tied to stuff her and Zoe got into eventually, if maybe it was a response to something that happened, or if maybe he was just a parent being a parent and she was going to be a rebellious teenager and do whatever the fuck she wanted. But it was kind of nice to see a different side of her, because when we see her, she's usually always like really rigid, really put together. But now we kind of understand it better because she's been wild and she's seen where that can get her. So it seems like the trying to maintain something more structured probably takes a lot of effort.
Mike.
Yeah, I want to double down on that point. I think the reason that I think the Lockley piece was, to me, probably the most interesting part of the whole episode was because it what's the right word, like eschewed your expectations. Like I looked at the Lockley character and I would imagine that she is, I would automatically assume that going back to school days, she's the kid that did her homework on time and did all the extracurriculars and was an A+ student and squeaky clean, and what you find out is that she's anything but. And it's interesting because at the same time as I say that, I know a lot of Lockleys in my life. I know a lot of people who had a kind of a messy upbringing and kind of ended up going the route of joining the military, enlisting, looking for something that would put structure in their lives because they desperately needed it. So it's kind of interesting. She's a mirror to a lot of real world people for me. And yet, in the context of the show, I didn't expect it. So I thought that was really interesting. And that right there is really some peak Neil Gaiman writing, I think. It's the kind of thing that he is so good at doing.
Kevin.
This is my favorite part of the episode. And it reminds me of the TNG episode Tapestry, because it gives you a completely different view of the character and really enriches the character immeasurably by giving you backstory that you would not have expected at all. And, to learn that Lockley had a kind of a wild past before she entered into Earth Force is incredibly interesting. The stuff about her dad is interesting. Like I say, it's my favorite part of the episode because I think it's phenomenal writing.
Nicole.
One thing I thought was interesting too is that she asked Zoe if she basically killed herself or if it was an accident. And to me, it seemed like that might have been something that plagued her. That was something that haunted her for however, well, I think she said she's been dead 20 years. So imagine walking around with that for 20 years, not knowing if your best friend, who's like a sister to you, did it on purpose or it was an accident. And also the trauma of finding her dead with roaches on her and stuff, like that was like awful. So I think that she said after that she was scared, and that's when she called her family or whatever. I mean, it was probably the worst thing that ever happened up until then in her life, but also it probably saved her life too. But I'm glad that she got the closure to find out like what happened.
Blake?
As Nicole was talking about kind of the scene with Lockley about Zoe and that uncertainty of was it intentional, was it not, as someone who's lost someone under those type of circumstances, that sense of not knowing is very much a thing. And that question of, did they do this intentionally? Was it an accident? How did it happen? Without having those answers can stick with you for a while. And I think the part that hit me in the scene with Lockley and Zoe, when Lockley had to access the computer and it asked for her password, and it was Zoe's dead, and that's what she had been carrying with her as the password. That part of that scene just hit me.
Yeah, the one thing with we've already kind of talked about how Tracy Scoggins is doing really well in this episode. I love that when she first sees Zoe, she even kind of reverts back to a younger person. You see she kind of balls up on the bed. She just looks like she's playing somebody who's probably in their teens. And then as she works through that initial trauma, she figures out, okay, well, now I've got to actually be the commander I am. And so she starts doing her thing. But for a little bit there, she kind of reverts back. And I like that little play that she does there. Anything else on the Lockley Zoe before we move on? All right, let's knock out an easy one, I think. And let's talk about Adira and Londo. Anyone want to talk about that one at all? Nicole.
I thought it was sweet. Of all the people that could have visited Londo, I didn't expect it to be Adira. He was hoping for the emperor, the first emperor, right? And when she came in, it was like he completely could not believe it. And it was, I don't know, it was just sweet, It was nice to see a softer side of him. And, in a way, I think, he was carrying her death. And he was like, I killed the man who killed you. And like, I think it was something that weighs on him and that he thinks about all the time, that she's not there, right? So maybe this was a way for him to have a little closure and kind of say goodbye to her. I don't know. I thought it was sweet, but you guys know me. I'm a sap.
Kevin.
Yeah, I agree. And I think I really truly believe that his statement that I would give it all up to have you back, I think is genuine. It really speaks to how he's changed, that her love would mean more to him than the power and the notoriety that being an emperor will bring. But he also knows that what's coming is a certain kind of prison, and that he is going to have issues of state to deal with for as long as he lives. And he seems a little scared by that idea. And I thought that was really an interesting part of the episode.
Emily.
I actually, aside from the whole sex with a resurrected person awkwardness, I did like that she was the one that came back, because there are so many people in his past. I mean, we could have had Captain Crazy Pants come back. And while I would love to see him again, because he is such a great actor, I prefer Adira. And I feel like it was a type of closure he actually needed, since it was someone he truly cared about. And I mean, he's crap. He's done terrible things, but this was one nice thing for him, I guess.
How nice of you to allow him this one nice thing, Emily. How nice of you.
Also, she's gorgeous, so
Jessi.
I just don't think we saw enough of that.
You wanted to see all 6 tentacles?
No. Thank you. We didn't have to see that part, but no, I think that, they just kept cutting back into little teeny tiny parts of them. And I wish that we had seen more of their plot, I guess.
I want to make a joke about wanting to see a lot of vagina, because that is the actress.
I thought so. I really thought it was her.
Okay, so we We know that you got Austin Powers. We're
Yes, I
good.
do get that reference.
Check. I agree that with Jessi, I think there should have been more time. Again, that's why I wish one of these would have been plucked out to give more time to breathe, because there's some good stuff in here. I think that Londo could, look to Adira for absolution on the fact that he caused her death, more so than, they're in the bed, they're having a good time. But that's what we got. Let's now talk about Garibaldi and Dodger. Who wants that?
Did they do it or did they not do it?
They did not.
They did not do it.
Completely up to interpretation.
I
And the
am
interpretation
unconvinced
is they did not.
that they didn't get a little frisky. I'm not saying all the way, just
Look, I mean, it was very clear that Garibaldi, immediately when he saw Dodger, was like, I am with Lise. I have a strong, Kevin, you've been doing this like every few minutes on the Beyond the Rim, and now we can kind of get to it, is whenever somebody asks, where's Lise? Kevin's been saying, well, he has a good relationship with her, and we finally see that. And that he flat out says.
They were looking pretty
She's
cozy.
dead
though.
and disappeared, and no one will ever find out. I'm just
When
saying.
Lockley popped up, they were looking a little suspicious, all right?
No, they weren't. Not even a little bit.
A little bit.
We were watching a different show. That was very much like, she's like, come sit with me. It's okay. We don't have to bang. Let's just talk.
You just don't trust the G-Man.
You don't
I don't
trust,
trust anybody, all right?
ever.
We've talked about this. I have issues.
Nicole, set us right.
At first, it was funny how he had a gun pointed on her. Who sent you? Is this from Bester? Who are you with? What, like he was very paranoid. It was very Garibaldi. He didn't trust it. He was like, what is this? And then after a while, he kind of like, okay. But I kind of thought it made me think of him as kind of teenage-ish. They were being kind of cutesy and sitting on the bed. And she was like, come here, blah, blah, blah. And I thought it was very innocent. Like he was very, I'm with her. And she's like, so tell me about this lease. And, so he made it clear that they weren't going to go any further. And then while he's like tinkering with the wires, she's like, you got a redhead who wants to do you basically, and then leave and never talk to you again. Like, what's wrong with you? And he was just so focused on what he was doing. And like, he had a goal. He had to tell Lockley less than a certain amount of time, and he beat it. But yeah, I thought it was.
And he beat it.
Yeah. Well, not his meat, the goal. But I thought it was really cute. I thought it was very like innocent and almost like two teenagers, kind of like Lockley and Zoe, but in a different sense. Like it was like two flirty kind of teenagers just catching up. And, one girl likes the guy and is trying to like flirt with him, and he's kind of like aloof. I don't know. I thought it was a really cute scene and dynamic between them.
Blake.
But you mentioned Garibaldi being suspicious and kind of paranoid. The fact he pulled the gun out from under his pillow when he went charging into the bathroom. I don't know how some of these folks sleep, but if I had a gun under my pillow, the odds are I'd end up shooting myself in the middle of the night. The way I, toss and turn and grab the pillows. I just don't see that as being that good of an idea to have the gun under the pillow.
Yeah, but that's like a super classic trope of like
It
the
is.
guy that doesn't, the spy or the guy that doesn't trust anybody. And that was the comment that I was going to make about this scene is, while I thought it was fun for being an unexpected twist, like who in their right mind would have expected Dodger from that one episode in that one season to make a reappearance here? But it's the fact that of all the people that they could have chosen to have a scene, being visited by a deceased character, and they already proved with Lockley and her friend, I forgot her name already, that it doesn't even have to be somebody that we knew shit about prior to this. But of all the people that they could have picked, they picked Garibaldi, who has had his mind directly messed with by Psycor. And yet he pulls the gun, and then very quickly, when he sees who it is, he's disarmed and is like okay with it and goes along with it. And I thought that was really interesting because, he very definitely could have like believed that it was some weird implant from Bester or some residual psychosis or something. Like, I don't know. It was. I thought that was curious how quickly he initially went from pulling his weapon to being like, oh, okay, let's chat.
Blake.
Well, I think this is an interesting choice for Garibaldi for who visited, but I think the other one could have been, because Gaiman obviously pulled from some obscure references. He did his research to figure out who to play with in this episode. But back in the episode with, what was it, Major Kinmer, from the President's Security Force, who her dad died because of Garibaldi.
Mm-hmm.
I think that could have been another interesting pull for Garibaldi. I get kind of why they went the Dodger direction with the unresolved storyline there, but I think they had so many potentials. That's why I really think this could have been a much bigger than a one episode, that I think this could have made actually a great basis for one of the TV movies, because there's so many pieces and so many characters you could have played with throughout this.
Yeah, and I'll lock onto that idea before I take a bunch of shit for saying that I thought this episode was just okay. I really liked the premise of this episode. Its execution fell flat to me, and I think it is largely because of how condensed it is. And I'll just jump ahead and say how much I didn't really care for the whole Rebo and Zooty thing, and would have gladly sacrificed it to have more of the interesting part.
Yes.
And Blake, you just brought up a good point, and I guess I was going to ask a question to the class as far as what other possibilities were there? To me, obviously, had things gone down differently for this season, Ivanova being visited by Marcus would have been an absolute home run of a premise for a segment in this show. And I'm scratching my head trying to think of who would have given two shits to be visited by dead Kefir. But
actually, Ivanova would have been better with her father too. That could have been
that's also true.
Issues there.
Jessi?
One thing that I think that this episode didn't do for me was explain the afterlife. Like, all of them acted like they didn't know they were dead. Nobody talked about any kind of heaven or hell or, maker or anything like that. Maybe I missed it. Blake.
Yeah, they didn't, and I think that was deliberate.
They knew they were dead, but there was no talk about where they were when they were dead, right?
Someone mentioned they mentioned going back to Brakiri, like the home planet, and I was trying to figure out if that was referring to that bit at the station or something else.
No, that was because what they were figuring out was that area of the station that had been cordoned off for some way, shape, or form teleported to Brakiri space. So it had nothing to do with the dead guys. It had everything to do with the station.
It was space magically on another planet.
Yeah.
Right, but they didn't talk about like where they were before they showed up.
Nope.
Yeah, I agree. And I thought that was an interesting choice because I picked up on that too. And I think that to me is, again, if you're kind of familiar with what Neil Gaiman writes a lot, it's kind of, he does a lot of heaven and hell, fantasy, religious, kind of cross-pollinated stuff. I don't know how else to describe it than that. And if you want to go watch The Sandman on Netflix, I recommend it. I really liked it, and it's a very interesting show. You'll get an idea of what I'm talking about.
Right.
But as far as B5 goes, I think he very deliberately didn't touch on any of that kind of stuff because it would immediately taint the episode with, it's like, how do you touch on something like that without saying Christianity's right and Muslims are wrong? That kind of thing. Like, you just avoid the whole thing. You let it be dark and mysterious. No one knows anything about it, and ultimately you're better off.
Yeah. And that was something that I guess I was waiting for, right? Like, my very first question to somebody that was not here anymore would be like, where'd you just come from? Like, what's it look like afterwards? So I guess, none of them asked, and that had been the first thing I asked. Like, is there a God? Are you in heaven? Or is there a hell? Stuff like that.
I definitely could see that. I could see a character asking them like, well, what's going on? And they're just like, I don't know.
Right.
Or do the Family Guy thing and be like, not a lot of chairs.
So, yeah.
Yeah, this is the one thing that kind of rubs me the wrong way with this episode. Again, I already said I like the episode, but we don't do space magic in Babylon 5.
That's nonsense. We absolutely do.
How so?
Techno mages.
Yep.
No, but that's clearly, they're saying that they're using technology in order to, and that's just, the good old Arthur C. Clarke line. Any technology far enough advanced is the same as magic to somebody viewing it. This is literally, we do some fancy incantations and we take a station and we transport it 27 light years away, and then we bring back dead people. This is not techno mages.
I see where you're coming from, but at the same time, this show has gone way out of its way to establish the fact that the soul is real, and it's a thing that you can suck into a sphere glass chopsky.
Still think that's a technology thing, and of course you can say, well, there was technology used to zap B5 over to a planet. It's just it's more fantasy than sci-fi.
One guy drew chalk in the hallway, and somebody back on the Brakiri homeworld turned on their version of the Great Machine.
It's not something that ruins the episode for me, and it definitely, to Mike, to your point, this is absolutely Neil Gaiman's wheelhouse. So it's not something that you'd be surprised by with him writing. It's just, it seems thematically that it's a little bit more out of left field than usual.
It is. I'm arguing with you for fun, but that's also one of the reasons that this episode fell a little bit flat for me. Like, there's just a lot about it that's just slightly off, and that's like I want to like it, I just kind of can't for some reason. And part of it too is the fact that I'm having a hard time personally, and I'm getting off topic here, but I'm having a little bit of a hard time with swinging from we had one-off episodes to heavy serialization, big storyline, to another heavily serialized big storyline, and then going back to one-off episodes. I'm struggling with that a little bit.
Yeah.
Well, and there's a scheduling thing here, which I think there's no spoilers here, so I'll just throw it out there. So this was originally supposed to air one more episode down. So the episode we were going to have down the road, we were going to get this one first. But because on TNT they like their NBA basketball, there was going to be a hard cut for several months after episode 12. So what JMS decided to do was to shuffle the deck just a little bit, put this episode farther earlier on, so that way when you get to the hard break on episode 12, which we'll get to, it counts as more of a, not a cliffhanger, but it gets people more interested to come back after NBA playoffs. Spoilers, they didn't come back, and that was a problem. But so I think part of the reason why this episode feels a little out of the normal is because it literally got dropped in there for that reason. It's more scheduling than anything else.
I don't know. I guess again, like to me, just now that you've said it, because it honestly had not occurred to me before whoever first brought it up. But like, if they had made this a movie, I would have been all over it, because that to me feels like a much better place for a sort of standalone, high concept episode.
This whole season to me feels like it's just like we're just going to throw in everything that we wanted to throw in, and like things that we never thought were going to happen because we thought we were going to be canceled. Like it's
weird, right?
Yeah.
We
is.
have an ongoing thing with the telepaths, which, again, I think that would have been another missed opportunity. They could have had Byron visited by somebody from his past. You could have learned something interesting about him here had they had more time. But
yeah, I can see that one, but then it wouldn't be fun for us. The idea here is we all get callbacks.
You all hate Byron, but
well, no, yeah. I mean, I've actually been saying I think Byron is doing pretty well for himself right now, but the whole idea is we get characters that we've seen before, except for Zoe, but Lockley's a new character anyway. So I think, I don't know.
Just a lot. There's a lot of different, arguably better stuff they could have done than having a Penn and Teller cameo.
I didn't really see the point in it. It just seemed like a weird addition, and I was with Lockley. Like, what in the hell is the point of this?
Was there another?
There was Lennier and Mr. Morden.
Oh yeah, let's talk about
that quick. That
one
one was interesting.
Continue.
Of all the people, it was Morden. And I'm still trying to figure out, is Morden just trying to fuck with Lennier, or what does he know?
I do like when Mr. Morden shows up, he's like, you don't get to pick who you get to see. Hi.
Yeah.
So what's the algorithm that does pick? How does that work is what I need an explanation on.
We don't find out.
It's interesting because I don't know how many times Lennier and Morden ever interacted prior to this. Not many.
Exactly. That's what I was thinking too. I'm like, they didn't have any sort of relationship whatsoever. Why is Morden the one visiting Lennier?
Jessi.
I thought the same thing. I'm not sure. Like I said, I thought it was going to be Marcus at first, and then it wasn't. And I thought that would have added value because he was, same position that Lennier's trying to be. I don't know what I thought, but then Morden just proves that he's just as big of a dick in death as he was alive. And, he's like, Delyn doesn't love you like you love her, right? And I was like, fuck you, sir. What the fuck? Why would you say that to him? You're just being a dick. But it was definitely not expected. And I feel like they were just trying to throw that character back in. I think the plot would have been further served better with other people being there than him. But whatever. I mean, it was entertaining, at least, I guess.
Blake.
So the people that showed up for our others, it's either around the theme of resolution or addressing unresolved issues. I don't think that would have worked with Marcus and Lennier. There wasn't an issue between the two of them that wasn't resolved.
Sure.
That's true. And I guess I'd ask the question. I don't necessarily feel like, while they did interact with one another from time to time, I don't necessarily feel like they had much of a relationship either.
Well, what was the relationship between Lennier and Morden?
I don't think it's so much about the relationship. It's what was Morden's question is, what do you want, right? That's
Right.
what he asked everybody is, what do you want? And in this circumstance, you've got Lennier fighting with what or / who he wants, which is Delenn. And you've got Morden basically having this conversation with him, more or less of, if you listen to the interaction of what Morden actually was telling him, you've got Morden basically giving the be careful going after what you want. So I think that Morden was more the cautionary tale with Lennier in this one.
Okay, can I jump in quick?
Carefully, because Scott's going to kill me as it is.
Okay, so along that line of thinking, the one thing that kept coming and popping into my head during that whole scene of interaction between those two is going all the way back to the question of, what is Morden? Is he the original dude corrupted and going along with the shadows as a willing ally? Is he a skin suit for a shadow? And then the question is, well, to whatever the hell he was before, what came back to visit Lennier? Was it shadow infected Morden, or was it Morden, the original human Morden?
I'll do you one better. Why is Morden? I think he is the old Morden, because I don't think Lennier ever interacted with crusty Morden. He wasn't around long enough. This is Mr. Morden, who probably was on the station for a good year. We just didn't see him every episode because he would just kind of bounce around talking to ambassadors and stirring shit.
Yeah, but I guess I'm thinking more along the lines of like, is this Morden, before he got on the ship and flew to Zahadum?
Oh, no. Because he even says to Lennier, my head's on a pike right now, still rotting on Centauri Prime. He knows exactly who he is.
He knows who he became.
And then he also says, I'm surprised Sheridan didn't come back because he's dead.
But then he goes on to say, as Blake was saying, is like, it's more the cautionary tale of be careful going after what you want. So that to me is almost like a little reflection of like pre-Shadow Morden saying like, yeah, I fucked up and made some bad calls.
Yeah, I didn't read it that way at all, but Nicole.
Well, Scott did say some of the things that I was going to say, but
Sorry.
That's okay. I'm going to say them anyways. So I thought this was an interesting combination because Lennier and Morden really didn't have any sort of relationship at all. I mean, Lennier knew who he was and basically was like, you're awful, you're terrible. And I did find it interesting that Morden said to him, like, don't believe everything you read or you hear from Sheridan. I'm surprised he's not here, So, like, I think Morden was trying to, like, I don't know, like, I guess going off of Mike's question, which I wasn't originally thinking of, but maybe it was more of a previous version of Morden, like before he, became a total dick. I don't know, but I did.
You're all wrong.
Well, anyway, that's fine. But I did think it was interesting that he was kind of like, don't believe everything you hear, like basically trying to say, I'm not that bad. I'm not all bad. And he's like, I worked with a lot of people. I think Morden is one of those guys who just did what he had to do to get around and get power and, got in bed with people that weren't the greatest. But as long as he came out on top on the end, which he didn't, his head is still on a stick. I think he was just kind of one of like, he reminded me of like a sleazy car salesman, like he's going to do what he's going to do, make deals with people, make his way through, not really have a lot of commitment. So I thought it was interesting to hear him say, don't believe everything you write. Basically, like he's not as evil as Lennier thinks. I did, however, think he gave Lennier some harsh truths and some cautionary tales, like Mike said. But the thing is that he said that he was going to betray his order, right? And Lennier's like, I would never do that. I would never do that. So I'm wondering, like, is Lennier going to turn bad now? Like, what's happening with that? But I also wonder if maybe Morden visited Lennier because he was the only person available at the time that, like, maybe he had an interaction with here and there. Like,
no one else will take his call.
Right. Like, because, Lockley already had a ghost and then Garibaldi had one. Everyone already had a ghost. So maybe, but also what I thought was interesting was that Kosh sent a message through Zoe to Lockley, right? Maybe Morden was supposed to give Lennier these warnings or maybe that was his whole purpose. He was here to give this warning. So I don't know.
A couple points that Nicole, they said that other people had experiences. It wasn't just these. We saw this.
Right.
So it's not like the Beetlejuice waiting room and they only had a few people.
Well, But maybe they didn't know Morden, or they didn't have an experience. They didn't have a connection with him. So why would he give them a message? Do you know what I mean? Obviously, everyone in that section, in that mile-long section, had an interaction with somebody. But what I was saying was like, it seems to me that when they were visiting, there has to be some sort of connection, or like, even though they're giving messages to people, like that could have been from somebody else or whatever. But like, who could have potentially wanted to reach out to Lennier that
I don't think
we
it
know that
matters.
passed on?
I think that's what Lennier gets told, is Lennier is expecting to have some kind of grand meeting with maybe Marcus, maybe somebody else. And by the way, JMS was asked why wasn't Marcus a part of the script, and JMS said, I didn't write the script. This is what Neil wanted to do. So he did it. But I mean, Morden says that right off the bat. He's like, you don't get to pick who comes. And so I think it says more about Lennier where he is right now at this very moment, that Mr. Douchebag shows up to say hi. I think that says a lot. And I think instead of worrying about, okay, why was this one here and why is that there and everything else, why is Lennier getting night calls from this piece of shit? That's the question.
Yeah.
Jessi?
That's what I was thinking, was like, okay, first of all, I don't think that he was trying to caution anybody for anything. I think he thrives off chaos and he loves that shit. So he doesn't give a shit if he doesn't give a shit if he does it or not. He's just trying to throw some fucking shit at the wall and see what sticks. My other thing is, of all the people that got visitors, who did Morden have the biggest, in my mind, who did Morden have the biggest connection to? Londo. So it could have very easily gone that way also and been very interesting and very different. But I just don't think he was trying to help it anyway. I definitely think he was just trying to stir shit up.
Like,
I think, too, when you think about Lennier in this episode, when he first meets Delenn, he can't even refer to Sheridan as her husband. It's your partner.
Your partner. I noticed that, yeah.
And just kind of the annoyed, oh, yeah, you referred to him as husband. But as I recall through this with the scene, too, is there was a certain point where Morden, towards the end, because Lennier doesn't want to listen to Morden. He just wants to meditate and be like, I can't believe this is who fucking showed up. And at the very end of it, Morden is basically pleading him, take what I've told you seriously. So I don't think this is Morden just trying to stir the pot. I think this is actually Morden trying to be what he came back for, which is to send a message to Lennier. And he's begging him at the end, like, listen to what I'm telling you. Listen to the things I've tried to tell you during this. So for me, I didn't take it as a stirring the pot or just trying to wreak chaos.
Emily?
That was one of the things I was trying to figure out. Like, is he just being a dick to be a dick? Or is it like Ghost of Christmas future warning type stuff? And the more I think about it, like, prior Lennier, before he joined the Rangers, he always seemed like sweet and chill and nice. And something about this new Lennier has almost like a weird dark edge to him, which makes me think that Morden isn't just trying to start some shit. He really is warning him to be careful what you're doing and what you're going after, and what I think he might be going after is Delenn. So I wouldn't be sad if he started some shit with Sheridan. That might be into prediction territory, but that would at least make for an interesting story.
Nicole?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think he had a warning and a message for Lennier. I just don't know how serious Lennier is going to take it by his reactions and when he was talking to him. But Emily, it's funny you said that, because I did feel like this was a different version of Lennier too. Just the way he was dressed, the way he was acting, like, oh, your partner, like, it was just different. It wasn't sweet Lennier. It was more like, fuck around and find it out Lennier. Yeah. I don't know. It was weird. So I definitely think that the warning should be taken seriously. Don't know how seriously he'll take them. But now I'm curious what's going to happen with him.
Anybody else for the Ghosts of Christmas Past, Present, Future, and Horniness? Anybody?
No, I guess just a general remark is, despite the fact that I think maybe Lennier is the outlier here, but Jakar states everybody that received a visitor seemed somehow more at peace. They all, in different ways, brought about some kind of resolution or closure. But I did really appreciate the fact that of the four the four scenes, vignettes, whatever you want to call them, that we saw, that they were all really kind of drastically different in tone. We had Lockley facing past trauma. We had Londo facing, I guess, the loss of a loved one, and Lennier and that kind of somewhat ominous whatever you want to call it. But I thought that was really interesting. I just thought that 50-foot view was kind of cool.
Mike, I'm glad you brought up Jakar too, because even with Jakar having kind of an ancillary part of this episode, we get a little bit more growth for our buddy as well too. He's realizing that throwing up defenses and walls sometimes isn't the best thing. I like what he says at the end too. I don't have the exact quote, but basically, regret is not worth it when you can't do anything about it or something like that, looking back or whatever. But I just like the fact that he's learning that, maybe you should dive in more and be more open to this kind of stuff, which is what Jakar's kind of whole arc has been. Let's go ahead and, unless anyone has anything else for the episode proper, we'll talk about our predictions and questions. So first off, newbies, I have a question for you for questions. And we discussed how there was messages being passed by Kosh. What do you all think that message means? Jessi's shaking her head emphatically. So
I thought it referred to when he dies, because it says when the long night comes, return to the end of the beginning. That sounds like some weird death prophecy.
Didn't we have an episode called The Long Night?
We did.
Yeah, so maybe it has something to do with what I don't remember off the top of my head what happened on that episode, but maybe it has something to do with that, or maybe remember when Sinclair and Sheridan and Delenn were like the one who they are, what the hell was that saying?
The ones.
Yeah, the ones, the future. So maybe it has something to do with the ones. I don't know. That's what I was thinking. Sorry, my brain stopped working for a second.
Jessi, you started shaking your head. What do you got?
I have no fucking clue. I'm not good at this stuff. I was watching it and my husband's like, what's that mean? I'm like, I don't fucking know. I'm not even about to waste any brain space on it either, because I'm not going to fucking figure it out and it's just going to hurt my head.
I will say it feels like Sheridan kind of knew. The way it was played by Boxleitner, he wasn't like oh god, another Kosh riddle. He was like, oh.
He looked freaked out. I mean, was I the only one who thinks he looked kind of freaked out and like, oh, I don't know. I thought he looked scared.
Freaked out or not, I read it like he understood. He got the message, whatever that message. I will say that just a little behind the scenes on this. So as we mentioned, Neil Gaiman put the script together. The one thing that wasn't written by Gaiman was this. So Gaiman went to JMS and said, hey, I got this idea that Kosh sends Sheridan a message. What should Kosh say? And JMS is like, have him say this. And then JMS said, I've been trying to get that line in since season 4 and I haven't figured out how. So Neil did it for me.
Nice.
Okay, let's go ahead and get to our proper questions and predictions. For those of you who haven't been with us before, the newbies haven't watched past this episode, so we're going to ask if they have any lingering questions or if they have any predictions of what's going to happen next. So, Nicole, questions and predictions.
I guess my question is Lennier going to turn bad, or is he going to have a dark path that he follows? Like, what's going on with that? Is Morden's message going to come true? I really don't have any other questions. I guess prediction-wise, I don't know. I got nothing.
Cool. Emily, questions, predictions.
Okay. I actually had a question that I meant to ask the other newbies and totally space cadeted on. Can I ask it?
If you must.
When you first realized that dead people were coming back, did anyone expect Anna to come back and talk to Sheridan, or was that just me?
I thought about that too. I did. I was like, oh shit, we're going to see that bitch again.
Because I thought that would have been so a really interesting storyline.
Yeah, I really thought that.
See, with Anna, though, we've never actually met Anna. We've met Puppet Anna. We have not met Anna, except for that video with the other actress we saw. That was it.
But I would love to see Sheridan's ex-wife come back and go, motherfucker, you dropped a nuke and a ship on my head.
I do love the fact that people keep popping up in Sheridan's room when they shouldn't. I keep going back to hologram Ivanova and stuff. So, Anna just popping in as they're hanging out in the bed, because one, then Jessi would get another bed scene. But also, that'd be kind of fun.
Yeah, I didn't think so, because I don't know if he needs 3 of his at one time lovers all in one place or not, but a little uncomfortable at that point.
Yeah, well, he might deserve some of the discomfort.
That's an episode in itself. Menage a Sheridan.
But really, my only question, kind of prediction, is what's going to happen with Lennier, because he did come back from the Rangers with more of a darker edge. He seems, I don't want to say openly hostile towards Delenn, but there is definitely newer tension there. And I don't like Sheridan either, so I side with him on that one. But I'm wondering if his goal is to basically go head to head with Sheridan. It would at least make for an interesting story.
Any predictions? Well, you just did that. Okay. Jessi, questions, predictions.
I was going to ask a question to everybody that if you guys had one dead person come back, who would you want it to be? But I don't know if we want to do that or not.
Sure.
Okay. So my question to everybody is, if you had somebody from your past come back, who would you want it to be? We're not talking about who would you not want it to be.
Who wants to go first?
I mean, my mom, no question.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Fuck, that's a tough one.
Emily wants Mr. Morden.
I was not prepared for this shit tonight.
That's a little deep. Come on.
Welcome to
Can we talk
therapy
about, like,
session with Jessi. We haven't done the
Right.
conspiracies yet, but now we're doing the therapy.
Talking about the like Victorian sex advice in the book I'm reading is less awkward. Actually,
Well, maybe that's who you want to have show up, the dead Victorian.
no, definitely not. But my grandma, if I could get her apple crisp recipe, because okay, no, seriously, she died my senior year of high school. It has been over 20 years. I still crave that fucking apple crisp, and I've not found one like it. So there you go. So if anyone has a good apple crisp recipe, send it to me. I'm willing to try them out, see if I can find one.
I got a mean Dutch oven one.
I will say my grandfather, because I actually never got the chance to meet him.
Mm.
Because he passed before I was ever born, so I would try to go that route.
My grandmother, she would always get, she didn't always get angry. When she got angry, she had this tick where she would bite her finger like this. You always knew when you were in fucking trouble because she'd just do this. So I like her to come back, and if she does that, then I know I'm on the wrong path. So I gotta shape up like Lennier does.
My problem is with my luck, I would get the equivalent of Morden or something.
That's what I'm saying. I think Emily would like to see Morden. That's just her bag.
I'm struggling with this one, but Blake had a pretty decent idea. I also have a grandfather who passed before I was born, so that would be very interesting.
I think that would be mine too, because my dad's dad died when he was like 12, and I never got to meet him. And it sounds like he was a very interesting person.
Okay. Well, thanks, Jessi, for putting us all on the couch. We appreciate it.
Yeah.
Do you have questions, predictions? Go ahead, Blake.
Well, I was going to say, it could be interesting to see what some of our listeners would answer that with also.
There you go.
For those of you listening, throw this in the chat on either the Discord or on our Facebook page with who you would want to have a visit with if you had the one night opportunity.
Or to make it more fun, who you would not want to have a visit with. So my only question is everybody else's question. Does Lennier's shit come true? I'm going to throw in the prediction that he does not turn out to be a terrible person like Morden is warning him against being. So I think that's it.
Okie dokie. Okay, that brings it into our questions and predictions. But as we have started, I don't even know why we've started this segment, but here we are. Jessi, do you have some conspiracies for us?
I do. And people love it. They've told us, they've spoken, they want the conspiracy
That one
theory.
guy in the comments section loves it so much.
That one guy is what keeps me going. Okay, let's see. Reptilians rule the world. Shapeshifters, lizard people, they're all real. We absolutely live in a simulation. Have you ever seen your neighbor take in groceries? I know we've talked about this before. Let's see. Melania Trump is secretly part of the Romanov bloodline.
Jesus.
She's Anastasia, twice removed.
She could be. The Pentagon has a zombie plan, and it's called Kana 8888. And
That's not a conspiracy.
I was going to say they probably do have
No,
one.
100%. I've done disaster response, and I shit you not, and this is not even classified. I won't get in trouble. There is a response for medical outbreak that causes people to lose their minds, and it goes into more detail. But it's zombies without saying zombies. It's a plan.
And lastly, the IRS has a plan to resume tax collection within 30 days of nuclear war occurring.
I mean, you got to pay for the new bombs.
Got to pay for the new California Republic.
I will say, I think our first one, though, about the lizard people being real, anyone who has ever bought a used car, that's absolutely true. Those
They're
people are
all
real.
lizard people.
Where do you find these is the question.
So my husband is a huge conspiracy theorist, and I bought this game called Conspiracy Theory.
The travel edition.
Yeah, this is a travel edition. There's different volumes to it.
So when you're running away from whatever conspiracy is real, you've still got the travel edition of the game. It's great.
Yes. So on the box, it says Time Travelers, Spaghetti Tree, Drone Birds, Epstein Island, The Uncanny Valley, CERN, Nine-Tailed Fox, Project Sunshine, Stars to Nowhere, and so much
Why
more.
have we not brought up Epstein's Island yet?
That's not a conspiracy either. That's true.
That's a real thing.
Mine last week was Epstein didn't hang himself. So.
Yeah.
Which is also not a real, or is a real thing.
I got.
Yeah.
So Jessi, I have a mission for you, Jessi, because I have to know why the hell the Uncanny Valley, which is just a thing, is on your conspiracy box. I need to know what that conspiracy is.
Yeah. I got you. I gotta. Oh, this was a side mission. Let's see. Anybody that has been programmed for mind control, the way to trigger the assassination programming in them is having them read Catcher in the Rye.
That literally comes from Manchurian Canned. It does not.
Urge to Kill Rising. Just kidding.
What the hell?
Prince Andrew claimed that a war injury prevented him from sweating. I think we're done for the day.
I bet he sweat when he was on trial.
Claimed bone spurs kept him from fighting in Vietnam.
But he went through Vietnam. He slept with whores, remember? He said so.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ. You can send your hate mail too. We don't give a shit.
I'm so glad we do this. This is my favorite part of the time of the podcast for the day.
So I will say we've been discussing, guys. We're getting really, really close. We're getting close, guys. We're getting close to 400,000 listen and views.
Wow.
And we were talking about we should do some kind of special for 400,000. I think one of those specials needs to be conspiracy time, a live conspiracy time. So if you want to have that, make sure to like, subscribe, and follow, and leave reviews so we can beat that YouTube algorithm that's kicking my ass.
Can we just declare a few conspiracy theories off limits because we just don't want to deal with them?
The Earth is round. Fuck off. Or spherical.
I'm okay leaving the flat one in. I'm thinking more of the type of conspiracy that involve people running around with tiki torches.
Those aren't conspiracy. Those are just assholes.
Bigfoot's real.
He's got a
there's
massive
an industry around that.
He's got a massive schlong.
Speaking of Bigfoot, I tried to stir the pot with cryptids, and I don't think any. Well, I don't know. I don't look at any social media, so maybe there's been a response to that, but I don't feel like it.
Mike, let's be honest. It came from you, so no one cared.
I know.
Wow, leave poor Mike alone.
Well, there you go.
So
Justin and I will hold a talk on the the Van Meter visitor. And
so the two missions you have for this episode, folks, for the 5 people who have gotten all the way to here, is Blake already asked you who would you want to visit you during Day of the Dead, and Mike is asking you again, what's your favorite cryptid?
I'm really not.
I really.
But you are.
Okay, let's go ahead and wrap up the show for this week, because, wow. We will be back next week to discuss In the Kingdom of the Blind. So we'll be back next week with the newbies and the first ones. Until then, be sure to like, subscribe, follow, do all of the stuff, and please leave reviews, because we are out of reviews to read. And that's sad. So we need some reviews. Until then, I've been Scott, and with me has been...
Blake.
Jessi.
Mike.
Emily.
Evan.
And Nicole.
And Bigfoot.
Thank you for listening to Grey 17, a Babylon 5 podcast. You can find all the places to listen to and watch this podcast at anchor.fm/Grey17podcast or youtube.com @Grey17podcast. We want to hear from you, so join the conversation at Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, or Patreon. Be sure to subscribe and leave a review where you are listening to or watching this podcast. Grey 17 is not affiliated with, and the podcast has not been prepared, approved, or licensed by Warner Brothers or any other owners of the Babylon 5 copyright. All clips included in this podcast are the intellectual property of the respective copyright holders. They are included here for purpose of review, and no infringement is intended. The opening and closing themes are available from Falling Matter on YouTube.
And what's out there?
The rim,
And beyond that?
the truth.
Welcome back to Beyond the Rim. Again, this is a spoiler section, so if you have not watched past Day of the Dead, you should exit now. If not, we'll dive into spoilers about Lennier and Sheridan being dead. That's about it. So let's go to questions first, and every newbie had the same question. Is Lennier going to the dark side?
Yep.
Unfortunately.
No, because this is not Star Wars.
Well, fine. I thought it was cute.
But yes, Lennier is going through some shit.
Yeah,
yes, the Lennier character, because of bad decisions, is going through some shit. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean, we've discussed this on a previous Beyond the Rim, but if you listen to Bill Mooney, he says that basically he asked JMS to do some sort of love story for Lennier, and JMS said, "Be careful what you wish for." And here's what we get. And as I have said multiple times, and I know Kevin has said it too, this is one of the worst choices in this entire series, and I think it's an assassination of a character, and it starts here. It's great.
Yeah. This is where JMS sets it up, and this isn't the only thing in the series that he foreshadows for quite a period of time before it actually comes to fruition. And this is by far my least favorite. I'm not the hugest fan of that kind of storytelling where you foreshadow something for seasons on end, but especially like this, when it's the Londo and Jakar stuff is a little bit different because there's deeper meaning to it than what you would assume from much earlier in the series. I mean, this is just, let's take a great, fan favorite character and just completely F it over.
Yeah, and to your point too on the Jakar and Londo, it's not just that it's different in that regard. It's different because we get closure with Jakar and Londo. We understand, we get told about the dream in Midnight on the Firing Line. We have seen what happens, and then we get final closure by the end of the show of what actually happens to both Jakar and Londo. And then if you watch The Road Home, you get even more closure with Jakar. But with Lennier, he runs off like a piece of shit, and that's it. And then we get a reference to him that he is an absent friend during Sleeping in Light, and that's it. And yes, as we've discussed, in the books, he does blow up Psychor. I don't care. It's still not good.
Right.
I will say, because you touched on this foreshadowing, Kevin, and I think one of the reasons I like this show so much is even rewatching it multiple times and years later, there's bits and pieces you catch up on where I think JMS used a very subtle hand with a lot of the foreshadowing.
Mm-hmm.
And there's just little pieces versus you watch some other shows that try to do it. And I'm going to knock on Star Trek Discovery here a little bit. Like, they were so heavy handed that so much of it could get predictable because it was such a heavy handed effort at foreshadowing versus this, which is just much more subtle. And you still go back and pick up pieces.
Yeah. Well, and they do that on Strange New Worlds too, but it's a story that we've all seen if we're huge Star Trek fans. And I was a little bit uncomfortable with it, but Mallory, who has never seen The Cage or The Menagerie or anything else, unless I made her watch it, which I don't remember, she really likes Strange New Worlds, and she even likes that bit of Strange New Worlds. But, that is fitting within the character's story and story arc and making it all fit really well. This is like, we're going to take a character who's been one of the, and I think I said this on a previous one, so pardon me, but one of the most likable and virtuous characters in the series, and let's completely fuck him over. And I don't like it. And I know I'm not alone. I know it's probably the most controversial, character set of the series, but I fucking hate it.
I don't think I've ever seen anyone come out on the social medias or whatever and say, I like the Lennier storyline. It's interesting though, Kevin, and I won't go on a side quest too much, I promise. But with Strange New Worlds, that's what actually hooked me on that show, because coming in, I was like, oh, this is a prequel. We know what happens to Pike. We know what happens to everybody. But in the first episode, and I won't spoil it because you should watch it, they turn it on its head in the first episode. And they say, well, this is a prequel, but there's a difference. And I like that because now we don't know what's going to happen. And I like that. But prediction-wise, we had two dynamically opposed predictions for Lennier. Lennier is going to go head-to-head with Sheridan, or Lennier does not turn into a terrible person. The answer is neither one, because Lennier is a pussy. So he's not going to go head-to-head with Sheridan. He's going to leave him to die like a wimp, and he definitely is a terrible person, sadly. That's my at least. Either one of those, right away, would be better results. That actually there is a fight between Sheridan and him, or he just doesn't become a dick. Both of those I'd be okay with. The one I'm not okay with is he leaves Sheridan to die and then comes back like a wimp afterwards and says, "Ooh, I tried to save you, but you were already saved."
Yeah, I was just watching a YouTube video about Lennier and Lita and how explaining by the books and a couple of unfilmed scripts from Crusade and some other stuff, maybe a comic book perhaps, that was trying to piece together what happens to Lennier and Lita after the series. And it alludes to the whole Psychor thing, among others. And like, that's okay, except that you know that the Lennier character's already been ruined by that point, so it means a heck of a lot less. And it doesn't seem to really have any weight to it at that point, because if you liked what they did with the Lennier character, which I do not understand, but feel free, it just doesn't make a lot of sense. But perhaps they were looking for some sort of closure to the character and some sort of virtuous end for him. But the whole thing, from this point on, is just terrible to me.
And then let's go into the last piece, which is the Kosh. And I know we will have some stuff to talk about with that, but before we do that, let's get into the newbies predictions. And we have Kosh and what his message was. Emily says it deals with Sheridan's death, but she didn't go any more detail than that. Nicole, it's referring to the episode The Long Night, or it refers to the ones, as in the 3 ones, which should be a rock band. And then Jessi had no fucking clue. So guys, let's talk to Kosh's message.
I'm sure that has to do with Sheridan's 20-year clock, which is at this point 19 years.
Yeah. He basically is telling him where to show up when he's dead.
Yeah, it says when the long night comes, go to the end of the beginning, which is when the Shadow War ended. And the Shadows and the Vorlons went beyond the rim because, as mentioned, they never find Sheridan's body. And I know when we had that little episode where they jumped all the time into the future, there was some comments about the messianic side of that. But the reality is Sheridan doesn't just die and leave a corpse. They take Sheridan beyond the rim with them. And I think that gets into the discussion that was started around this whole Day of the Dead principle. And I think The Road Home gets into it a little bit more with, regardless of species, religion, belief, that the universe is kind of this one fabric and there's this one spirit of everything. And that when something goes beyond the rim, when someone dies or anything like that, that's how these spirits are able to come back across this plane. And the Berkiri have found a way to facilitate that somehow. But really, I think The Road Home ties up a lot of this materials. Not necessarily the specific storylines, but I think it adds a lot to the background of the concept of faith, the soul, what happens to people, and like the whole fabric of the universe side.
Yeah, absolutely. I was reminded of The Road Home when I watched this episode too, and I appreciated that scene in Road Home with Jakar even more so after watching this episode again, which I haven't seen this episode since I watched The Road Home.
So Blake, are you suggesting that going beyond the rim is somehow synonymous with death?
Yes.
Okay.
It's definitely, I think what JMS has alluded to both in the series and in The Road Home is the universe is a living conscious entity. So death is not death. Death is you're a part of the universe going back to the universe. So I don't know if you keep your consciousness or not unless the universe wants you to. But the idea is the universe is trying to figure out itself through you, which is very Buddhist, by the way.
It's the way Kosh worded it too. Go to the end of the beginning. The Shadow War ended, but it was a new beginning for everybody. It was a new beginning for the galaxy without the Shadows and Vorlons. It was a new beginning for the Shadows and Vorlons moving beyond the rim with the first ones. So I think that's kind of this constant flow of there's beginnings, there's endings, and there's beginnings, and it's a constant flow throughout the universe.
And a bunch of transitions, hence the going beyond the rim and all of that as well too. Mm-hmm.
There's I think it's first season, if I'm not mistaken, a episode of Star Trek Voyager that I've always liked the message, if not the episode, which
is a good episode of season 1.
Yeah, I think it's called Emanations, and I don't think it's a particularly good episode, but I liked the message from it, and it was basically that if you're dying, you can't just cease to exist because there has to be some sort of energy transfer, because that's basic physics. So there has to be something beyond, because energy can't just cease to exist. and that was the premise for the episode, which again, I'm not saying it was a great episode, it really wasn't, but I liked the message from it.
Not the one where the dead folks showed up on the asteroid.
Yes, that's the one.
We're gonna have to talk about what a good episode is.
I just told you I didn't think it was a good episode. I liked the message.
Now, let me be. This is all getting really woo woo, and it's great. But let me be.
Is that a scientific term?
Let me be the skeptic for a minute. Yeah, there is energy transfer. It's called heat. So you give off heat. That's it. And then the heat gets transferred somewhere
Scott,
else.
for that.
I'm sorry. When you're dead, the light goes clear.
You're just, you're killing. Okay, fine.
I'm sorry. Actually, the best example of what being dead is like, I actually heard from Neil deGrasse Tyson. And he's like, try to think back to the month before you were born. That's death. It doesn't exist to you. The end. Have a nice day.
Well, isn't that a nice little bedtime story? Thanks for that.
Sorry.
Okay, so you and Neil deGrasse Tyson are off my Christmas card list.
And yes, as an atheist, I still celebrate Christmas because presents.
Yeah, well, I'm agnostic, and you're just as presumptuous as religious people. The end. Goodbye. Let's keep.
No, but see, here's the thing, and we can do this all day, but it's not. I don't presume anything. I just don't have any evidence. Therefore, with no evidence, I can't presume anything. So show me some evidence.
That's okay. I've got a friend who calls me a fence sitter because I haven't made a decision. So
it's kind of true. I used to say that. I used to be agnostic. Part of it was because I didn't want to be outed as a full blown atheist.
Right. So I'm there too. But I don't have to worry. My in-laws don't listen to this show.
Come out of the closet, Kevin. Come out of the closet.
No, not with my in-laws. No, thank you.
Come on, that'd be fun with your in-laws.
No, it wouldn't.
I didn't say it would be fun for you. I said it would be fun.
28% of the population now claims to not have a religion. Okay, on that fun note.
Who can worry about that shit? I have bills to pay.
Exactly. As Robin Williams would say, God just went click. Okay. On that fun note of death and what happens afterwards, you can tell us that in the chat too. What happens after we die? Do we show up in Garibaldi's room and not get laid? Is that what happens? Let us know. Until next week, I have been Scott, and with me has been...
Thoughts and prayers.
Mike.
And Kevin.
And be sure to like, subscribe, follow, join us on all the social medias. And again, please, 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 head over to Apple. I know it's a terrible company, but just for a second, and leave us a review. It would be awesome. Thanks. See you next week.
Death is final.
Rebo, is that your ass or mine? Zooty, zip, zip, zip.